Hello, it's Friday, September 22nd, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News. Happy autumnal equinox, everybody. Yup, it's today. Depending upon when you hear this, it might already have happened. The official time, 20:02 UTC. And of course, that's a different configuration for your individual time zone. And as you hear this, the due east equinox sunrise might already have happened for you. But maybe it's not too late for you to catch the due west equinox sunset. It's often said at each equinox, or equinox if you prefer, the sun rises due east and sets due west. And that is true, no matter where you are on planet Earth. But why is that? And another question, how can we visualize that? How can we use our mind's eye? Bruce McClure, who writes this article for earthsky.org, gives us lots of information coming up. And this is the part where we remind you, no tests here, just information for your entertainment and enjoyment. So first you need to know this. An equinox occurs when the sun crosses the celestial equator. No matter where you are, the celestial equator intersects your horizon at due east and due west. At its highest point in your sky, the celestial equator appears high or low, and that depends on your latitude. The imaginary celestial equator is a great circle, dividing the also imaginary celestial sphere into its northern and southern hemispheres. So, from the equator, it's directly overhead, for example, wrapping the sky directly above Earth's equator. For the purposes of today's visualization, though, the height of the celestial equator in your sky doesn't matter. What matters are these two things. Thing one, the sun is on the celestial equator at the equinox. Thing two, the celestial equator intersects your horizon at points due east and due west. Voila! The sun rises due east and sets due west on the day of the equinox, as seen from around the globe. Where does the celestial equator intersect your horizon? Well, Bruce McClure says no matter where you are on Earth, unless you happen to be hearing this broadcast from one of the poles, the celestial equator meets your horizon at points due east and due west. Next question. Why is it that the sun rises due east and sets due west at the equinoxes? Well, this is a situation where it's just bad radio for us to try to describe the above graphic that's in this article. It's a collection of blue lines on the celestial equator and purple lines that show you the what's what. We'll just say in this case, one picture is worth 1,000 words. And it shows you the ecliptic, which kind of is part of this entire concept. At the equinox, just suffice it to say, the two lines intersect. Here comes another fact. The sun rising and setting today, due east and due west, well, at every equinox, makes it a great day for finding due east exactly and due west from your yard or your favorite vantage point for watching the sky. Just go outside around sunset or sunrise and notice the location of the sun on the horizon with respect to familiar landmarks. If you do this, you'll be able to use those landmarks to find the cardinal directions in the weeks and months ahead, long after Earth has moved on in its orbit around the sun, carrying the sunrise and sunset points southward or northward. And here's a cool fact. There is something known as an equatorial ring. It was used in ancient times in an attempt to determine the equinoxes. The ring plane is set parallel to the plane of the Earth's equator. If the equinox happened during the daylight hours, the inside of that ring was expected to be completely in shade at the equinox. There's an image with this article. It's really worth checking out. And to do that, simply head over to ufoheadlinenews.com. So here's the bottom line. The 2017 September equinox comes today, September 22nd, at 20:02 UTC. At equinox, the sun rises due east and sets due west. Now let's segue from the autumnal equinox to, well, the autumnal equinox. We found 7 things to know on the first day of fall. This gets a byline for Len Melissurgo, who writes it for NewJersey.com/news. The autumn equinox, otherwise known as the first day of fall, arrives Friday, September 22nd, 2017, in the Earth's northern hemisphere. The transition marks the time when the sun will be shining directly on the Earth's equator, bringing equal amounts of daylight and darkness. Here come those 7 things to know about this fall equinox. Number 1, when is the autumn equinox? Well, we just talked about that, but here's a little bit more. Fall will officially arrive at 4:02 p.m. Friday on the east coast of the United States. Though that will mark the official end of summer, temperatures in the state of New Jersey today are expected to climb into the summer-like 80s under partly sunny skies. Temperatures could warm this weekend into the mid to upper 80s, so it won't feel much like autumn if you're in New Jersey. Which is correct, fall, autumn, or autumnal equinox? And this article says all 3 are commonly used and acceptable to refer to the first day of fall. It's sometimes also called the September equinox. What does equinox mean? Well, the word equinox was formed by 2 Latin words, equi or equi or equa. Apologies here to my dear Latin teacher, Mildred Tenhave. That's the Latin prefix for equal. And the nox, well, that's the Latin word for night. The equal refers to the fact that the amount of daylight and darkness on this day are nearly equal. And there are technical reasons it's not exactly equal. There's a link if you want to know more. What about the southern hemisphere? The fall equinox only arrives on Friday, September 22nd for the northern hemisphere of the Earth. In the southern hemisphere, well, down there, you're celebrating the vernal or the spring equinox. How is the autumnal equinox celebrated? In some cultures, the start of autumn is celebrated by feasting on the summer's harvest and making preparations for that winter to come. In other cultures, it's a time to remember and honor the dead, quote, by visiting, cleaning, and decorating their graves, end quotes. And there's a link as well if you want to know more about that. When is fall back or the end of daylight saving time? Well, daylight saving time does not correspond to the autumnal equinox. Daylight saving time began March 12th and ends Sunday, November 5th this year. There's that cool thing about remembering how to set your clocks. Spring forward, fall back. And last but not least, is the autumnal equinox significant for weather forecasters? The answer to that is not really. Meteorologists don't follow astronomical seasons, and they don't consider September 22nd the start of fall. Weather folks consider the first day of autumn to be September 1st. For them, December 1st marks the first day of winter, the first day of spring, March 1st, and the first day of summer, June 1st. Each of these seasons are known as meteorological seasons, and they run 3 full months and are based on the annual temperature cycle instead of the Earth's rotation around the sun. There's a great chart of detailed explanation put together by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, what we call NOAA. You can check that out later at ufoheadlinenews.com. Alrighty then, who wants to know about a strange new object just spotted in space? Well, if that describes you, then here we go. We grabbed this headline from newatlas.com. It gets a byline for Michael Irving. Astronomers have discovered a brand new type of object in our solar system, an active binary asteroid. That means this object, named Body 288P, is the first known hybrid of 2 rare types of asteroid, a binary that's made up of 2 rocks orbiting each other, and an active asteroid that acts more like a comet, leaving a trail of gas and dust in its wake. Traditionally, the line between asteroids and comets was fairly clear. Asteroids are chunks of rock and metal, while comets are icier, causing them to leave a vapor trail when the sun heats them up. But the more we study these objects, the more that line blurs. Active asteroids kick up clouds of dust and gas, giving them the appearance of comets. But these are rare, with currently only about 20 known examples. When they orbit within the asteroid belt that lies between Mars and Jupiter, these objects are called main belt comets. Body 288P was discovered in 2011, and images captured by the Hubble telescope back then indicated that it was active. But at that time, the asteroid was too far from Earth to get a good look. In September of 2016, the asteroid was on its closest approach to the Sun, and as it passed within 200 million kilometers of Earth, astronomers from the Max Planck Institute used Hubble to peer closer. And that's when it became clear this was made up of not one, but two separate pieces. That makes 288P the first binary main belt comet. There are observations that reveal some of 288P's many quirks. Most binary asteroids are made up of one larger body with a smaller moon orbiting it. But 288P's pieces are roughly the same size, each measuring about 1 kilometer or 0.62 miles wide. And they're much further apart than usual, orbiting each other at a distance of about 100 kilometers, 62 miles. According to the Max Planck Institute astronomers, rapid rotation may have caused 288P to break up in the first place, but the fact that the object is still active suggests that this would be a relatively recent development, occurring relatively recently, 5,000 years ago. Then, the gases it spews likely drove the two pieces apart into their current distant orbit. Here's a quote from Jessica Arwal. She's the main author of this study. Quote, 288P's activity probably played a decisive role in its further evolution. The most probable formation scenario of 288P is a breakup due to fast rotation. After that, the two fragments may have been moved further apart by sublimation torques, end quotes. Gentle listeners, we tried to find something to explain sublimation torques. Gentle listeners, we tried to find something to do with sublimation torques online. Gotta do another Google search. It was Greek to us, shall we say. But the article finishes with, among the many thousands of pieces of debris floating around out there, Body 288P is a completely unique object. Further study is required to figure out how common binary main belt comets might be, and what clues they can reveal about the origins of our solar system. There's a video that accompanies this article. It shows action on 288P. You can check that out later at ufoheadlinenews.com. Speaking of things to check out later, the weekend's coming up and we're going off the beaten path once again. We've got stories from a sighting that involves, yes, a Scooby-Doo umbrella. It's hilarious and scary at the same time. We've got updates on more of those amazing cryptoid stories brought to us by Phantoms and Monsters and Lon Strickler. We'll cover that as well. So join us this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, for Off the Beaten Path. Same time slot as the UFO headline news. And speaking of UFOs, here comes one now. Well, a sighting, that is. No need to duck. Let's go to the area of Princeton and Trenton in New Jersey in the United States. It's got a MUFON case number 86820. The date of this sighting is September 20th, 2017. It was reported September 21st, 2017. Here's the summary. Hundreds of flying objects, Monroe, New Jersey. Well, that's a third area location. Under sighting specifics, the witness lists a very close initial viewing distance, 20 feet or less, then 21 to 100 feet, 101 to 500 feet, 501 feet to 1 mile, and over 1 mile. In other words, this thing was moving. The altitude was treetop. The sighting duration, 2 hours. This object featured a patterned surface and unknown. Here's a description of the flight path of this object. Stationary, hovering, then path with directional change, path, then hovering. This object was shaped like a diamond. No clue as to what was going on weather-wise. There's no mention whatsoever. So let's just cut right to the sighting. In the first person, raw, unedited words of our witness. I went for a walk around 9 p.m. I saw an object in the distant night sky, getting closer. It was large, with blinking red and white lights. As I continued my walk, I noticed more approaching from behind me. They were various shapes and sizes, and their lights were all different colors. No two looked identical, except for the larger ones, which looked similar in size and shape. These things were flying at different speeds and different distances from me. Before I knew it, within a matter of half an hour, hundreds were in the night sky. Some were orb-like, others looked like twinkling stars in the distance, and there were a few others that were gray and black and larger, kite-shaped vehicles with blinking lights. Some of these lights that blinked were white, red, and green. And then I noticed one of these hundreds of lights emitting a cloud trail. Upon turning around and returning home, I noticed the flying pattern seemed to be in a cyclical rotation, spanning for miles above my head. Some of these objects were flying and hovering in clusters, while others seemed to be independent. Some ascended and descended, while others moved at such a slow speed they didn't seem to be flying at all. I was unable to capture any film with my phone. Once I returned home, I caught some with my laptop camera. However, the pictures do not do the experience justice. Within an hour, airplanes also appeared in this area. There were at least 4 airplanes flying approximately over the scene right above my head. There were hundreds of strange aircrafts in the sky that night. Wow, and from what we know, it's a relatively popular area. It's a recent sighting. We'll see what pops up in the area of Princeton and Trenton and Monroe in the state of New Jersey. And by sheer random chance, we go from Monroe in the state of New Jersey to the city of West Monroe, state of New York. That's the setting for MUFON sighting number 86731. The date of this sighting is the 17th of September. It got a same-day report. Here's what the witness offers by way of summary. Clear sky, better view than normal. Looked up, star moving across sky. Very fast, no blinking. Under sighting specifics, the listed viewing distance is over 1 mile. The altitude was over 500 feet without cloud cover. The sighting duration was 1 minute. The object features are simply listed as none. The flight path was a straight line path, and this object shape was star-like. No weather listed, and it's a short report, but here we go. Clear sky, better view than I normally have. I looked up and there was a star moving across the night sky. This star was going very fast, and it was not blinking. I suppose it could have been a satellite, but I've seen satellites before, and this was much easier to spot than any satellite. And there were street lights on tonight. This definitely was not a plane I was seeing, as there were no blinking navigational lights. And, as well, a plane flew by a minute after, so I could tell the difference. This object wasn't a meteor. It had no tail, and this object eventually went across my entire plane of view. Yep, it's that old trope of stars don't move like that. Let's move to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for this sighting. MUFON case number 86817. This event happened on the 20th of September. It was reported September 21st. Summary. I did not observe it, only noticed later in photos. Well, that's pretty much standard as well. Goes with the territory. There are photos submitted with this event. You can find them later at ufoheadlinenews.com. Make your own assessment. Sighting specifics are vague. The viewing distance unknown, altitude unknown, sighting duration 2 minutes, object features unknown, as is the flight path of this object, but its shape was square or rectangular. And we're left to assume weather played no part here. There's nothing listed. The event seemed to go something like this. I was walking around at Point Park around 8:40 p.m. I snapped a few photos of the fountain, the stadiums, etc. It was dark, so I had to manually focus the camera. Otherwise, my pictures appeared fuzzy. Later, I was looking at the photos, and I noticed that in one picture there were 3 objects in the sky. At first glance, I thought these objects resembled military aircraft. However, if you're able to zoom in, you'll see that they bear no resemblance to normal aircraft. There's a second photo taken 1 minute before the photo I just described. You can see one of the objects, and you can faintly see the other. In that photo, the object looks like it has little lights or circles on the bottom. Somehow it reminds me of a footprint. Normally, I would write off this type of thing, but what's bugging me is that we neither saw nor heard these things flying above us. I feel like we would have noticed them. I was staring up at the sky. If these things hadn't appeared in my photos, I would never have noticed them. And also, I don't think they would have shown up if I hadn't been trying to focus the camera. So many cases where it's a trick of the camera, a trick of the light, prosaic and mundane objects captured in such a way they just don't look like anything from here. Check out the photos later at UFO Headline News. In this case, see what you think. What we think is we've run out of time. We must fly off now because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Take care of each other. Thoughts to those affected by all the stuff going on planet Earth. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a